Tonight is day 4,380 of Boswell Being in Business. I'm Daniel Golden, the proprietor of Boswell Book Company, and I am thrilled to be introducing a Milwaukee event from one of our favorite authors and one of our favorite conversation partners / editors / booksellers. Erica Ruth Neubauer is the author of Murder at the Mina House, which I am thrilled to say, we might mention this a few times because we're very thrilled, is a finalist for 2 major mystery awards, the Agatha, which is put together by Malice Domestic, and the Lefties from Left Coast Crime. Her new book is Murder at Wedgefield Manor, and one bookseller wrote about this book. Neubauer's sophomore effort is just as sparkling as her debut, filled with dashing adventure, a classic mystery, 1920s glamour, and a touch of romance. Murder at Wedgefield Manor once again updates a classic formula for contemporary audiences. And I just want to say I've been talking about this book so much that a couple of days ago, my sister said, could you please buy me both books? So these are going off to her tomorrow. We are very honored to be having Neubauer in conversation with Tim Hennessy, mystery reviewer, bookseller, and the editor of the very acclaimed best-selling anthology Milwaukee, I can't say the word, Milwaukee Noir. So thank you both for coming. I'm going to go away now so I can mispronounce more words.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thanks, Daniel.
Oh, it's gonna be a building.
Yeah. How's it going?
It's going all right. Are you drinking anything? The people want to know.
Yeah.
Nice.
What would be a conversation in general with us if we weren't drinking something?
Drinking something, it's fair.
Very true. Congratulations on your multiple nominations.
Thank you.
Having watched the process of you go from somebody who started writing and went through the same, process of, the ups and downs of getting something off the ground and just kind of finding your legs as a writer, to seeing you not just having your second book out, but being nominated for the first one it's been so exciting to watch.
Thanks, Tim. You're a good friend.
So what has it been like? What's the biggest difference between having your second book come out versus your first? What things has, the pandemic anxiety is not even like a maybe at this point. It's a year into it, so you don't even have that kind of thing going on. So what's it like with not having a whole different set of
things to be anxious about?
of just did you seem much calmer?
Was I not as calm last time?
No.
Okay. Well, fair enough.
I wouldn't have been, but
it all still honestly feels so surreal because it's still all virtual. I went and signed books at Boswell's. Everybody at Boswell's has signed books. I went and signed books at Boswell's, but it was still masked. I was still hiding in the back. It all feels really surreal. So even the second book doesn't quite feel really real. Although I was on the Morning Blonde yesterday and I did want to throw up about that. But yeah, I don't know if I've learned anything. I honestly can't wait till I get to be at an event in person with actual people, which will probably make me feel like throwing up also.
Was the process of writing writing books that followed the publication of your first any easier? Was there any less pressure or any, you've already got over the threshold of getting something out there, when for so many that's, just, something that's a mountain hard enough to climb?
For sure. So what I did was I finished the first book, and while I did all the revisions, I had like a million versions of the first book on my computer, I think like 11 or 12. And then while my agent had it on submission to the different editors, I wrote the second one. I figured it was a good way for me to channel my anxiety about that and not worry about what was happening over there. And I already kind of had an idea. So that's how I kind of got ahead. And I did find that it was easier to do it. After writing the first one and rewriting it, I kind of had a good feel for her voice. So her voice actually is coming pretty easily for me. at this point.
So the first book, Murder at Manor House, was set in Egypt, and Jane kind of stumbled into a mystery. This time around, Murder at Wedgefield Manor, Jane's a little bit more familiar with investigating. It's not, she kind of hits a groove a lot more comfortably. And so what can you tell us about book 2?
So in book 2, I don't want to give a ton away if you haven't read book 1, but book 1 reveals some secrets. Everybody's got secrets. So they, instead of going home to America after their adventures in Egypt, Jane and her Aunt Millie decide to go to England to spend some time with family. And so they end up at a manor house, and Jane's kind of bored, so she starts taking flying lessons in a moth, which is a little yellow biplane. And then one of the servants is murdered, cut brakes on a car. Yeah. And so because of it's her relationship with the people who own the manor house, she is again asked to get involved.
So with the moth and flying, is that something you have experience with, or how did you end up researching it? Have you taken flying lessons? And just you've neglected to mention it.
When I was 19 and in college, I took a couple of flying lessons. So, and I didn't go any further with it, mostly because when I looked, like, immediately after that, it's really expensive. And I was in college and working like 2 jobs, and like, who's got time or money for any of that? So I joined the military not long after that. And of course, the recruiter was all like, oh, it's so easy once you're in the Air Force to get your pilot's license. It's all a load of BS, what they're selling you when you talk to a recruiter, all of it. So of course I did not get my pilot's license. And I never did, but my stepdaughter just got her private pilot's license, and I'm super proud of her. Yeah, right, Erin? I see Erin saying she totally forgot about that. I did, took a couple lessons. I got as far as where they make you, and it was like a little Cub or something. It was a small plane, a Cessna. I was doing this little Cessna. And I got to the point where like they take you up and they make you like go up and then stall and then like float for a couple of seconds, because you have to learn how to recover, like throw the throttle back in and bring the plane back to life. That's terrifying.
I would imagine.
So
did you know at the time, did you just file that experience away and like that's a book somewhere?
I sure did.
Where did the idea for Jane come from?
So Jane was, and honestly, my best friend Beth and I were drinking on my back patio and reading, and I was reading Ashley Weaver's book, Murder at the Right Well, and I loved that book. And so I kept putting it down and saying, I really want to write something like this. And so Beth and I started brainstorming about it, about like what my main character would look like, about where it would be. And obviously I wanted it to be in Egypt. And so we got really loud and kind of rowdy, and we were laughing really hard, and my neighbors slammed their windows on us. They were not as impressed with my idea.
They just didn't realize lightning was striking at that moment. Back to the speed of lightning.
No, it's more like, let's get another beer.
They just heard bottles clinking.
Yeah.
So what are some of the difficulties of writing a historical story without interjecting too much of a modern day filter?
Oh, that's really hard. I know I'm pushing those boundaries. But there's some, I really like books that do that have a little bit of a modern sensibility, or as far as they can push it. There's a lot of romance writers that do a really good job with that. Like Tessa Dare, I think, does a fantastic job with that. And it is difficult. Like, I really want to be as accurate as possible, so I do as much research as I can before I actually sit down to write. And I try to be as, true to the time period as I can, but still make Jane as forward thinking as I can push up against that boundary for the 1920s.
You have a lot of details about the clothes Jane wears.
Do
What
I?
length? Yeah, you do.
All
I
right.
feel like I've learned more about post World War One women's fashion than I ever imagined.
I'm really
Which,
sorry. Man.
which I guess which is great. I guess I never thought about it.
Well,
Which is true. I've never thought about it. Are there what lengths do you go in researching them? Fashion of that time period. Do you have any favorite pieces or outfits that you wish would make a resurgence?
what a fun question. I honestly tried to not over describe the clothes.
No, I think it was a good balance. It's not
Okay.
like I put zero thought into
Women's
like
fashion of the 1920s.
women. Yeah, if I had to describe, I would just ask my wife.
That's fair.
And I hope she knows how to dress imaginary people better than I would.
I am not ashamed to say that I didn't take any of the outfits, but I get a lot of inspiration from Miss Fisher's Murder Mysteries, the show. The costuming in that show is exquisite, just beautiful. And so I got a lot of inspiration from that, but also I just did a lot of Googling. I think I have a book of like 1920s women's fashion that I would pull a couple of things from. But I did a lot of Googling and just looking at, vintage pieces from the time period and kind of making stuff up from there.
Sure. What are some of the difficulties of writing? Or I'm sorry, that was a different question. Jane what made you decide to make Jane into a victim of abuse? How did you find like balancing giving her, I guess, a story that had, reflected a lot of the changing roles for women, and also trying to kind of balance the tone of a book and of a series that, it was going to be something she would struggle with and, not overshadow a lot of lighter moments in it or overtake the narrative?
So I wanted this to be something very light and fun and escapist, but I also want to be able to and want to highlight issues like social issues that are really important to me. And domestic violence is one that is actually really important to me. When I was a police officer, I went to a lot of domestic violence calls. They're a lot of what a cop does. And you're really just putting a Band-Aid on a situation. And they're some of the most dangerous calls because they're so volatile and emotions are high. And I guess it's still not something that is really talked about even now super publicly, and it surely was not talked about then. So I really wanted to give her a little bit of a darker backstory and a place where I could like highlight those issues, maybe have people think about it and think about, stuff that's still going on today. I think domestic violence rates are through the roof with the pandemic. I really wanted to give her something, a place where she was coming from that wasn't all light and easy and super fun.
And I know you touched on it earlier, and this is a completely different topic. You've had many different careers. You've been in the military, you've been in law enforcement, you taught, you've worked retail, and you've got your PI license and started doing work like that. And you're a successful author. Given the wide range of experiences and the characters that are embodied in your work, have any of those experiences really affected how your worldview and, and if so, how has it shaped your work?
Oh man, Tim, that's a hard question.
Yeah, well, I got to come up with something eventually.
Where are all the softballs? Has it changed my worldview? I hope that it hasn't made me as cynical as it could have. Although I think I was born cynical, especially growing up in a house with my dad as a police chief. Just a lot of dark humor in that house. A lot of cynicism. I think I avoided a lot of it. I know that after if you stay a police officer for a number of years, a lot of them do become very jaded, just what you see on the streets is kind of awful. And it was less than 2 years. So it didn't get that far. And for the rest of it, I think working any of those jobs, you're just running into a lot of characters, really interesting people that you can draw from. And in this book specifically, I have cameos or shout outs to 2 people that I actually served in the military with. Because in this book, there's a lot of veterans. I kind of focused on the issue of veterans for this one. And so, yeah, I definitely, all of those life experiences have really just set me up to, like, you know, build more interesting people, hopefully, for characters.
Had you always hoped to kind of get a book that kind of, I guess, work in the veteran angle?
No, that just happened. It just sort of happened. I was reading, I like to do a lot of research before I start writing. And so I was just reading a book about England in the 1920s and like the social things that were happening. And there was a great deal of it about like the veterans and the issues. And I was like, oh, perfect. I'm a veteran. I should write about veterans. So that was going to be the thing I did for book 2.
Yeah. It's always been amazing to me. I mean, certainly having read a lot of memoirs from veterans and certainly fiction from veterans, how almost virtually never there's a book written by a woman who's either served, who's really served at all. So it's always been kind of fascinating to, like, that's a point of view that seems so underserved. It would be really rich with possibility. I'm sure I'm missing somebody's that would be I would love to read. But that was, I mean, I've kind of always kept my eye open for it. So it's always kind of great. I mean, I think for the same reason, I don't know. I'm sure, again, there's probably women who've been law enforcement that I've not come across their books either. But I mean, it's certainly perspective that would lend itself well, especially to nonfiction.
Fair.
And fiction. So when you had those different jobs, did those jobs allow you the opportunity to have a time or the mental space to have a creative life too? Or were you just mostly kind of, was writing something at that point in time you were really thinking about?
So I have always wanted to write a book. And I'm sure if I found old notebooks, like I would sketch out like ideas for, I could write a book about this. And I never did it. And it never got any further than like, you know, a single page in a notebook of, you know, some ideas. And I had never actually done creative writing before. I never took it. I have a degree in English, but never took creative writing. So when I finally sat down to do this, I think I did a NaNoWriMo once before just to prove I could actually finish something, and it was complete garbage. It made no sense. But yeah, when I finally sat down to do this, yeah, I hadn't really done it before.
I know,
and I hadn't done it during all those careers and all those jobs. I hadn't done any writing.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've talked a lot about, especially in the last few years, is the difference between your process of writing and I guess what I do. And what I do is mostly, it seems like more plagued with self-doubt and struggle to get words on page. And you have kind of turned me on to this mindset of filling in the parts that you know the answers to, like the tests that I also was not good at doing in school. I would try to struggle my way uphill through every question. And you have this, you know, instead of finding the answers, you know, and doing, you know, working your way through the problems later.
Yeah.
And so could you describe what I'm not describing as articulately as you have in the past? When you're working on something, like you have always like put out, like you will have writing days where you get a good chunk of work done. And I would usually sometimes struggle to get like 500 words down, thinking each one had to be somehow much more perfect than they ever turned out. So could you describe a little bit of that?
Sure. So my theory, and everybody writes differently, is to just puke it out. So I just sit down, and it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. You just have to get it down, because then you have something to work with to revise later. And Jane came really easily to me. I hope that's the case going forward, because during this pandemic, I was struggling to get 500 words a day. Yes, Holly West, you are classier. You vomit it out and I puke, but I am, you know, from rural Wisconsin. So I just like do this and just get it on the page. Or as Susie Calkins like to say, just kind of like catch words on the page like this. You just have to get it out and get it on the page. And I don't worry about whether or not it's good. And I am plagued with self-doubt. Sometimes I'll be like, this is garbage. What am I doing? But you just have to keep going. Just have to keep going to the end and get there. And I usually write, my first drafts are usually like, I don't know, 55 to 60,000 words, which is short. And they're mostly dialogue and action. So I get most of that out, and then I set it aside for a couple of months, as long as I can, 6 weeks to like 2 or 3 months. And then I come back to it with fresh eyes and I look at it again. And I not only fill in the detail, like all the description comes in later. That's when I'm like looking stuff up and like, what does this actually look like? Filling all that in and making sure the plot makes sense, what I've written down. And then filling in like all the character detail and all that backstory and stuff is when I layer that in my revisions that come up and get it up to, you know, the word count it's supposed to be, which is around 80,000. Got to puke it out, Tim.
I know. Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's gotten easier actually since I've been doing that more. So, the one question I did forget. Does the person you based Aunt Millie on know you based them on?
That person is deceased. So that person couldn't be mad about it because she's deceased.
Does seem specific.
It's my grandmother. She was, I mean, there are a lot of terms that you could use to describe Lois, but we will use a pot stirrer. She liked to stir up the pot with people. Good old Grandma Lois.
Do you find it difficult to use people alive? Because someone alive that we know does make an appearance in book 2. Does basing someone?
I'm honestly trying to think of who that is.
It has a distinctive eyebrows.
Oh yeah, Johnny Shaw.
Do you feel any obligations or pressure basing characters off of anyone?
No, Grandma Lois is, I will say,
Yeah.
Grandma is the only person where I based like her personality on a person. The rest of them I'll just use a name, and then the rest of the character is not based on that person at all. So like my friend Chris Hammond, he is a pilot in this book, and he's actually a nurse. He was in the medical department with the Air Force when I worked with him. He's not a flyer at all, but the personality of the person in the book is not actually him. I just stole the name. Same with Johnny Shaw. I did not, none of that is relevant to Johnny Shaw as an actual person. But Aunt Millie is the only one that was really based on a real person.
Well, that's good.
Personality-wise.
So do you see, what do you see for the future for Jane? Is it a character you hope to get to spend a lot of time with? Do you have other avenues, other stories you want to tell in different avenue or different universes? Or
I would love to spend more time with Jane. Actually, book 3 is turned in. Book 3 is set on a transatlantic cruise. And there's a German spy and some gaslighting. And I'm planning on starting a draft of book 4 this summer. So yeah, as long as they want to have me keep writing Jane, I would love to keep writing Jane. That said, there are a lot of other things that I want to try my hand at. I have a nonfiction book that I want to start writing, and I don't know, I'd like to write a ghost story. Like, there's a lot of things I would like to, like, you know, give a whirl to.
All right, sounds good. That's it.
That's it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can come up with more.
There's some questions in the box here.
Awesome.
Oh, Keith Brubacher, bless your heart for being here. Are there any specific authors that you draw on for inspiration? That is a good question. So the first one definitely was Ashley Weaver. I really loved that series. There are a lot of authors that I'm inspired by, a lot of them that write in the same subgenre that I do. But also the old ones. I grew up on Agatha Christie. Man Masterpiece Mystery, and I think I started reading Agatha Christie in like 5th or 6th grade. Was really banging through those. So definitely a lot of that golden age feeling I definitely draw on.
Oh, so
Yeah.
Redvers, or I should say, books really are a part of Jane's personality. She's reading a book certainly in both books, in multiple scenes, and certainly her tastes might even kind of inspire her pursuits to sleuth. What is Redvers like to read? And is that going to be, I mean, what if he's not a reader? I mean, I've dated somebody who was not a reader, and that was, I mean, I obviously didn't marry that person. So it was, I would say, a line in the sand at some point.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't even know how we got, yeah. But is that something that you could even see being a compatibility issue for them?
I just popped back into the chat, and I want you to know that Beth McIntyre is super indignant about this idea that Redvers might not be a reader.
I'm trying to help the plotting. I'm looking into the future.
I want you to know that I probably agree. I think that he probably reads a lot of history.
Have you figured out what kind? I'm just trying to help book 4 come to life.
Book 4. You know what, Tim? Book 4 is going to be very specific about the kinds and just depth of volume of books that Redvers is reading.
It better be like a high fidelity post World War I name drops of things topics that they can possibly argue over.
Right? Perfect. Oh my goodness. Questions are rolling in. Was Wedgefield Manor based on any house in particular? Wasn't it an excuse to binge Downton Abbey? I had already binged Downton Abbey, although I think I lost like the last 3. I don't think I watched the last couple of seasons. So I was actually at Tasha Alexander's house, and she has an enormous book of English manor houses. And so I poured through that. I wish I could remember what it was called, but it was enormous. It was a huge, enormous coffee table book. And so I poured through that, and I picked a couple that I really liked. And so the Wedgefield Manor is kind of a mashup of some of the details of the ones that I really liked the feel of. So that's how I came up with that. Did
you feel beholden to have like a very detailed plan of how the manor was laid out? Did you think any of that? Okay.
No.
Because I mean, you had Egypt. At least when you traveled to Egypt, you could, describe the settings there with a little more.
Yeah. No, I probably should have. I should probably have made a chart, but I didn't.
Didn't seem necessary.
Didn't do that. Post-COVID, Gretchen Beatner wants to know, post-COVID, are you going to take research trips, and can she come along? Gretchen, I would be delighted to have you come along with me on a research trip. And yes, I will be taking them post-COVID. Very excited about that. I'm hoping number 4 is going to be set in Greece, if you're interested. What kind of ghost story? What have you been inspired by? I love Simone St. James. I think she does. Yeah, let's all go to Greece. Simone St. James does a really great job with paranormal elements without making them super cheesy. She's got a couple that are set in the 1920s that are great. I cannot remember the name of my favorite one, but it's set in a home for soldiers with shell shock, and the protagonist is pretending to be a nurse to work there, and the joint is super haunted. And then she's got like her modern ones, the Sundown Motel, I think was her latest one, and The Broken Girls were both excellent. I really, really enjoyed those, and both of them have paranormal elements and mystery, both, but I think she does a really good job. So that's my inspiration for the ghosty stuff. I'd love to be able to do something like that. How did you pick your main character's name? Your wife wants to know.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So Jane, I just really love the name Jane. And then Wunderly is because I believe I had recently watched The Maltese Falcon with my dad. And one of the names that that Mary Astor's character gives is Miss Wunderly. So I don't think it's the same spelling, but I got that from there. And then Redvers, I honestly looked up like some lists of like popular men's names. Silence for the Dead, that's it, Beth. Popular men's names in Britain in the 1920s, and just went down the list. And I think I came across Redvers. It might have been a last name. And I was like, I love this name. I think I'm going to use it like Cher, where like they just have, he just uses the one name. I don't really know why I decided to do that, but I like it. Brad Parks wants to know, Jane Wunderly is such a great character. I love spending time with her in the first book. Thank you. How do you think she's different in the second? How is she different in the second? I hope that she's come a little bit, like I'm hoping that I'm like her character arc. Well, it was a stumper, Brad. I'm hoping that her character arc is her growing as a character and kind of overcoming her past. She's really seen some things and they have affected how she interacts with other people, especially men. And I'm hoping that as the books progress, that kind of, that she kind of is not able to get over it, but is able to reconcile some of those things that happened to her.
I also think in the first book, she kind of just bumbles
Yeah.
into a body that she has a question, she needs an answer, and she's not really, she's kind of compelled to keep moving forward. And then the second book, she's a lot more assertive in trying to solve a mystery. There's much more, like she feels much more of, you know, like she has the initiative that she didn't necessarily have. Was that something you really, did you expect her to kind of find her legs as a...
She also isn't a suspect in the second book.
My wife is also letting me know that she, with the loudest whisper, she's not a suspect in the second book, so.
That was the best stage whisper that has ever happened. That's a good point. She wasn't a suspect. It wasn't anything I'll be honest, it's not anything I consciously did. It just happened. So I don't know. Susie wants me to tell you about her love of coffee and cocktails. No real question, just tell us. Jane really, and that is because I am probably 60% coffee at this juncture in the pandemic. I think I drink a lot of coffee. So that definitely is something that I passed on to Jane. And the cocktails, her favorite is a gin Ricky, but she'll drink other ones. Gin Rickies are okay. They're all right.
How much research went into the alcohol of the time periods? I know Susie was also researching at the time. How much collaboration was there?
It was not as much collaboration as there should have been, to be fair, between Susie and I for our 1920s cocktails. But I did do quite a bit of like testing them out to see what I actually liked. And the gin Ricky was kind of the one from that era that I settled on that I was like, yeah, this is good. It's not super sweet. It's refreshing. I like it. What books am I personally reading currently? So because I am trying to embark on a nonfiction project, I'm actually reading, I have a huge stack of true crime books sitting here, which I'm happy to share with you. So we've got Just Mercy, which Daniel recommended, The Fact of a Body, Know My Name, We Keep the Dead Close, Hillbilly Elegy, which is not necessarily true crime, but and The Officer's Daughter. So that is what I am working through, and I just finished The Babysitter, My Summers with a Serial Killer, which was really interesting.
Kat would like to know more about your nonfiction project.
I bet she would, and that's a secret. I went to Egypt to research Murder at the Mina House. What experiential stuff did you do for this book? I didn't do as much for this book. I have been to England a number of times. My dear friend is from England, so we have visited family there, or not family, but like visited where he grew up, and I've just spent a bit of time there. So when I was in grad school, I did like 6 weeks in Scotland and then did some trips down into England. So I didn't do quite as much, and I didn't get to do a research trip for this book. Now for the third book, which is on the transatlantic cruise, I did do a transatlantic cruise. The median age of the people on that cruise was like 100. So as a Brad follow-up, how has her growth affected her relationship with Redvers? It will continue to affect her relationship with Redvers and whether or not they're able to overcome her resistance in general to men. Right now, she's really doesn't want to be attracted to him, doesn't want to like him as much as she does because of her poor experiences in the past. So that will change as the books progress. That's it. That's all the questions. Are there any other questions? Nobody has anything.
You must have answered all the questions.
I guess so. Well, Daniel, do you want to come back?
Oh, I do have. So one of the things I think we've found is, so what is having a community? I think we've talked about it before too, that I think on the outside, you don't necessarily associate Milwaukee with having maybe as robust of a writing community as we found. What is having a community and certainly a bookstore and to you as a writer?
Like I so
because everybody thinks of it as everybody thinks of it as really kind of a lonely pursuit, and typing away and
I have found the actual writing itself is obviously a lonely pursuit, but the rest of it is fantastic. Like the mystery community, I'm humbled to be a part of it. Like the people I have met there and the friends I have made, we're hanging out in the chat room over here, are just beyond phenomenal. Just warm, welcoming, loving people who I would not be here today if it weren't for a lot of the people here in the chat. Just so supportive, and I don't know, in the mystery community, at least, there's not a huge sense of competition. It's a sense of there's a sense of community and like helping one another. And I really would not be here without it. So that is really different than what I guess I expected as a writer. Yeah, I had so much help to get here.
Okay, I'm back.
Hi.
Hi. I would say that we've been really lucky to have you in the community. We have been lucky to have both of you because A, you organize nights out at bars when we were able to do that. But also,
this means not drinking alone.
Also, you brought us so many wonderful writers, like also nominated for Lefty and Agatha Awards, Susie Calkins and Lori Rader Jay, for example, were both on the call. And back at the Murder and Mayhem, I think I got to meet Brad Parks there, and I know you go to the conferences where it's just all social. It's so even if you weren't in a city, if you were in a city smaller than Milwaukee, it seemed like compared to some sort of genres, you guys know how to connect, which is really great. So, and we love being ancillary to that as well.
Well, it helps to have a great bookstore.
Exactly.
I hope we get one in Milwaukee one day. But we're very, it's funny. I was just talking to a friend of mine in another city, and he's like, we can't figure out how to get mystery events. And you do really have, I was like, wow, we're pretty happy with, we get such really great events from, but it really does really help to curate authors in your community and really support them, and also curate the conversation partners too, which to me is something that makes the programming really successful, whether it's virtual or it's even more so in person, because there are stores that will, they just go to the publisher, like, find us a partner, find us a famous person. And it's really important for us to, well, we have had a few, but most of the time we're like second tier, so like, you go find somebody. So it's going to be wind up person who would have been able to do it if the event had been in person anyway. So so thank you, Tim. That's a thank you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You're welcome. No, it's exciting to do it. I've gone to so many events over the years. I started going to events when it was Schwartz when I was in high school. And so getting to do this kind of stuff was always fun. I mean, we don't get to do this at my store. We just have a very different environment. So, and getting to talk with writers is a lot more fun.
Yeah, it's definitely, the only thing more exciting to me than the events is getting to talk about books with customers. Yeah. And fortunately, I get to do both with you as writers and customers. So that's kind of cool. Tim, do you have anything to recommend coming up that you're excited about? We gave a chance to Erica Ruth.
Sure. Other than Erica's book, I'm really looking forward to John Brandon's upcoming book, which I do have. Ivory Shoals. I'm reading his work for a piece that I'm doing in the Southwestern Review. And his work is just so funny and so surprising, and it's not been like anything I've really read in a long time. And I review a lot, and I don't necessarily always connect with the material I'm reviewing. So it's really, really fun to read somebody who's making me laugh out loud, not just the characters, but with the narrative and just his pure ability as a storyteller to kind of just really just grab your attention and pull you along for a wild ride. So his book comes out in June.
I will. Here, say something else and I'll try to find it. Tell me, say the name of the book again. It's John.
Oh, Ivory Shoals.
Ivory Shoals. I'll send a link to folks.
Yep. And his book Arkansas is one I'm reading right now, and that had been his first novel, and it's a crime book actually. So with some really hapless drug dealers who are in over their head pretty immediately, and it's hilarious.
Oh, cool! It's from McSweeney's too.
Yeah, he's kind of a mix. People have compared him to a mix of Elmore Leonard and Charles Portis, which is really apt because it's kind of that kind of melding of sensibilities.
I wanted to ask you, Chris has been really crazy for the first mystery from Jonathan Ames.
Oh yeah.
Have either of you read that yet?
I've read, I read the short story that was the basis for his TV show, which was fantastic because one of the things I do love is certainly relatable crime with bumbling idiots, because like if it was up to me to try to pull off something, I would screw it up. I would trip while I'm running from something, and then the beatdown would commence, or the cops would. And so whenever there's somebody who kind of grounds things in relatable foolishness, I certainly gravitate towards that. But it's great to see like he hasn't necessarily focused on doing crime stuff. So when he has, it's always been really surprising, and it's always fun to me when people try different genres and really kind of stretch different muscles and don't necessarily stick to one area that they're known for. It's certainly not easy but
he's all over the place. Yeah.
I'm giggling, Tim, because that reminds me of us bumbling around on my first surveillance when I drive for surveillance.
Yes.
And we did a terrible job.
We did a terrible job. We were the worst PI and idiot assistant that we could possibly have been.
It's too bad somebody didn't take that.
It would have been really boring.
It might have been funny.
We were really hoping something exciting would happen, but utterly unprepared for it.
Yep.
I just want to come full circle. Your series was in some ways inspired by Ashley Weaver's first book, or have you read the new book? I heard, it's a new series coming out.
Yes. I randomly blurbed it.
Ah,
Yeah, we have the same
come full
agent.
circle.
Yeah, I know, it does come full circle. It's really weird. It's really good. I really enjoyed it. It's set in World War II, and the protagonist is a safecracker.
Ooh.
And she kind of gets blackmailed. She gets caught trying to burglarize somebody's place and gets basically blackmailed into working for the government.
Wow.
I know, I really like it.
Let me send the link for that too. You know, if you click on these links, they'll still be there after you go away. I know we have people from all over the place. And so I just want to say, you don't have to buy the book from us. You can buy it from your favorite independent bookstore, wherever that may be. You know, you could say Boswell told you to buy it from them and give us credit, because I don't, somehow that works out for me in the end, but I'm not really sure how. It lets me sleep at night. Well, I think if we don't have any questions come to you, Tim?
Yeah, there's a bunch of them here in the
Why don't we do a few more questions? It's still a little early. So.
Sure. How did I find my agent and publisher? So I found my agent. I queried the normal way. I looked up who represented the kinds of books that I was writing. And I was lucky enough that I had a dear friend who looked at the list of agents I had queried, because I made an Excel spreadsheet, because I am a nerd. That made a little Excel spreadsheet of who I had queried and what their answer was. And he looked at it and reached out to one of the agents because he knew her and said, hey, I know this person. And she hadn't seen my query. And so asked for it again. And then I ended up signing with her. And it's Ashley Weaver's agent. And then my publisher is because she sent out to the editors she knew at the publishing houses. And Kensington is the one that picked me up. So Lawyer Today wants me to say the word sister in crime. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Sisters in Crime and Mystery Writers of America are both fantastic organizations that I belong to and have also been very helpful with my career. You're welcome, Loy. How many years go by in books 3 and 4? So these actually take place pretty quickly. They're all in the same year. They take place pretty quickly in a row. And I think 4 is going to be like right up on the heels of 3. So I think they're all going to be 1926. Katrina wants to know if I know the end of Jane's story, and I don't know the end of Jane's story yet. I think she'll tell me when she's ready. Beth McIntyre wants to know who this book is dedicated to. And I would
this could be a heartbreaking answer. You might have teased it.
I would like to read it to everyone so that they all know that this book is dedicated, although it got put on the copyright page, which is too bad. This is for Beth McIntyre, for everything, for always. Beth and I have been friends for 36 years, so.
There wasn't a donation to a charitable organization.
It was not. Beth sat in front of me the first day of first grade. She was wearing a striped shirt. Daniel, your face.
I don't know who was sitting near me in first grade. I just know that in first grade, my first grade teacher stood all there were so many Daniels in the class that she stood us all up and she renamed us. And so I was Danny for the next 20 years because of where I stood in size place. And after that, it blurred out every other person in the class.
Wow. Wow. I don't even have a response to that.
There's nothing you can say. You know, we don't rename children now. We let them tell themselves what they want. It's a better world.
Yeah.
Crying. It is rough. I agree, Lori. All right. Do you have more questions? Are
Nope.
there more?
I have one more book to suggest.
Yes. Love it.
Yes. So I would, the other book that I've really been loving that I unfortunately had to put on pause to review other things, but we'll be back to shortly, is Nikki Dolson's short story collection, Love and Other Crimes, which is one of the best short story collections I've read. She's just a phenomenal short story writer. And She's got a story that's going to be out in the next Best American Short Story Mystery Short Stories that Stuff Cha is putting out this next year. So I would recommend buying it just for that story alone, because she's a phenomenal writer, and it's certainly one people will be reading for a long time.
Very cool. I always like to end with a little kind of, I feel like a book recommendation is a benediction in these sort of events. And also we do have the books for sale, of course. And yes, yes, Erica Ruth has signed them all, and you can still put in personalization requests, because if nothing else, I kind of live down the block from her, so I can get them over.
You'll just bring them back.
Yes. So thank you so much, both of you, for a wonderful evening.
Thank you for having us.
Continued success to both of you.
Thank you.
And thank you all for coming, because we wouldn't have a virtual bookstore, which is open for browsing noon to 6, without you. So hope to see you at another event. And someday, maybe the next one will be in the store. Who's to say? We'll still probably tape it. Good night, everybody.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Right.